20,000 is my high end, and 12,000 would be my worst case scenario correction on Bitcoin. Yeah, so wild movement in crypto markets, wild movement in stock markets. I mean, bonds, we know the bond market has been crazy with yields. But bottom line is, when you look at the crypto market, it did exactly what it should have done. And I know that sounds weird to people, but the charts really give us insights. They give us the probabilities to kind of decipher what the likely outcome is. And I remember last time we talked about this bigger down move from 69,000 to about 33,000, and then how you got in this sideways choppy kind of consolidation pattern in cryptocurrency. And that's, if you look in a textbook, that's a standard bearish, channel pattern, bear flag pattern. So what that tells you, and by the term bear, we know that more than likely it was going to break down. It did just that, and it came down sharply, basically tagging 25,000 on the charts. Now, one thing I will show you, which is just so cool, and this is just how cool the charts are, but if we go to another channel, and I love my channels, as you guys know, and if we just draw a parallel down, look at what you got here. Like, where did Bitcoin stop falling?
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
here at the lower end. And look at that hit, and that hit. So it's amazing how these charts show us, but I actually ended up going long on Bitcoin right down here just for a trade. Again, it's not a long-term investment, but just for a trade based on the fact that we hit this lower end of the trend. Yeah, so right now nothing in the chart has changed. So 20,000 is the high end of my target. And again, just to understand where that's coming from, it's coming from the 2017 high. I believe that we have to get back there. We have to retest it. The idea here is that we're going through this first time ever for cryptocurrency where, the Fed is hiking rates substantially. They're sucking money out of the system. We've never had a period since Bitcoin's inception where there
Right.
wasn't some sort of QE going on, right? Well, now they've sucked that out. They've taken that away. They're reducing their balance sheet and they're raising rates. So it implies that we should have a bigger correction than usual. The other thing that I'd love to show you guys is 20,000 is the high end of my target. The low end is actually down at 12,000. Is basically, if you look at this move down from 69,000 to 33,000, that's basically a vertical drop of $33,000. And if you take this high here at 48 and drop that same 33,000 down, which is what's called a measured move in technical analysis, you get $12,000. And what's even more fascinating is that if you look at previous cycles like 2017, when it topped out till the end of the bear market, in 2013, Bitcoin corrected 80 to 85%. Well, guess where 80 to 85% is? It's right around 12,000. So 20,000 is my high end, and 12,000 would be my worst case scenario correction on Bitcoin. Yeah. If you believe in that long-term case, and remember, you always have to reanalyze that. What I suggest is every month, re-asking yourself, is the thesis still valid? And as long as it is, then I think overall, and I do believe in Bitcoin longer term, I think that you will be rewarded if you hold, and you hold through this pain. But I think it's also important to understand is that in 2017, when we were at the lows, people were talking about Bitcoin not surviving. And you have to be ready to weather that emotional kind of nature that's going to be very, very inbred in a lot of people. You're going to see people writing crazy things on social media, and you have to really be able to block that out and stick with your thesis unless it changes. Yeah. So that was always a myth, right? That it shined in times of inflation, because we never really had inflation since the beginning of Bitcoin, right? It was always 2% or lower until now. And you've gotten in a scenario where, I do believe long term it is the digital gold. I truly do. And that's when I will accumulate a large position when it gets low enough for me. But I think it's also important to
Yeah.
recognize that, Bitcoin's been around since 2009. It's only a 13-year-old. And think about it in logical terms. Like, for those of us that have kids, is a 13-year-old thinking logically, or are they very erratic, right? It's not mature. Like, the gold market has been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's very mature. You don't see big moves in gold, maybe 1% here and there. It's a very mature market. So eventually you will see Bitcoin mature into a much more stable market. But right now it's still being bought and sold by people panicking and being greedy and all this craziness. And it's still a very young asset. Yeah, so I'm in the camp that all we can do is look at past cycles. Now, again, it's important to understand that this is not necessarily like a past cycle in Bitcoin or a bear winter or a crypto winter because we have the Fed doing what they're doing. But in general, 12 to 18 months from the highs. So I would again say generally another 12 months. The only kind of caveat here is, and this is my one worry, is that if you look at Amazon in the dot-com bubble or the NASDAQ, after the 2000 collapse, it actually took 15 years for the NASDAQ to take out the dot-com bubble highs. I really hope that doesn't happen because that's a
Jeez.
really long time. But as a technician, it's important to look at all angles, even the ones you don't like or you don't believe in, just because you have to be informed. You have to know all this stuff. It has to all go into your algorithm in your brain about your decision making. Yeah, I mean the Terra Luna collapse was insane. To see one of the top cryptocurrencies go to
Yep.
now hundredths of a penny. But again, understand what they do, and this is actually an important point because a lot of investors are like, oh, let me buy it down here. I mean, people were buying it at 10 cents, thinking, oh, this is a great, it's going to have a snapback. But please understand, they're doing the same thing as they do with stocks, where they dilute, they issue shares to try to shore up the UST, the stable coin. And so basically, I think you went from like 300 coins of Terra Luna to like billions and billions and billions. And so it's very hard for a stable or for Terra Luna to actually bounce back significantly when they're just printing more and more of it. Basically, I bought off of this lower range right down here based on
Right.
major support. This upper line is resistance. You can see we just kind of kissed it and pulled back a little bit. I do think Ethereum has more upside, likely back to about 2,500 in the near term over the next week or two. But again, I'm in a position where I'm looking at a bigger breakdown on the chart, and this is very problematic. And let me draw this trend line in for you guys. Is this trend line was such a good trend line until it broke. So see how for basically going back to early 2021, you kept on hammering and hammering and hammering, and then it broke. And once a trend line like this breaks, it's very hard for it to get back above this range. And ultimately, it may have bounces, but then the next leg lower comes in. So unfortunately, at a very bare minimum, just like Bitcoin going back to the 2017 highs, I'm in the camp that you're likely headed back to about 1,400 at minimum on
Oof.
Ethereum.